Hello and welcome to the Book of Leaves podcast. My name is Cara and I am your host. Hello and welcome to episode 43, or the very first episode of season 3, but we'll just stick with episode numbers to keep it simple. You're so welcome here and I'm so happy to be back recording this with you guys. If this is your very first episode, hi, nice to meet you. My name is Cara and I'm an actor and a tour guide by trade. Obviously those are all not happening at the moment, so I'm working in a supermarket to pay my bills. Was just there all day today, so I'm pretty pooped, not gonna lie. But yes, this is a podcast where I interview people who are doing something good for the planet and we take a leaf from their book, hence the name. And yeah, the environment is just something that I'm really passionate about, and I just thought I'd do this as a little hobby. So it's lovely to have you here, and I hope you stick around and listen to previous episodes and future episodes. And for all my regular listeners, hi, how are you? And it is lovely to be able to talk to you again. So this episode we're going to be talking to Carrie Ann Moran. Carrie Ann is just a fashion icon. I'm not a fashionable person. Most people listening to this might know that for nearly all of my podcasts, all I wear is a dressing gown. Well, not all I wear. It's not that kind of show, you guys, but I wear just the same kind of comfortable things all the time. I think living off hand-me-downs, I never really, developed a sense of style. But Carrie Ann, oh my goodness, she has a sense of style, and what's even better than that is it's a sustainable style, and she's all about the circular economy and loving what you own, mending what you own. So I can't wait for you to hear what she has to say. And she works for Thriftify, which I interviewed Ronan, one of the founders of, before. I think it was episode 4. He is one of the very first episodes, and they have just exploded. They're doing so great, and I have to get them back on the show again soon. But Thriftify, if you don't know, is basically an online platform that allows you to shop from charity shops, because charity shops were in Ireland anyway. For anyone in America, you have what I think is known as thrift shops. You go in, everything is secondhand, whereas over here 99% of our secondhand shops are all otherwise known as charity shops. Everything goes to charities. But Thriftify basically developed a way that they can sell online. So you go online and you can shop from these charity shops online. How many times do I have to say online? And it gets delivered to you in compostable packaging. It's all about circular economy. They also make sure that the items are priced fairly. But anyway, go listen to episode 4 if you want to find out more about Thriftify. They also are selling fashion and clothes now, so definitely check them out if you haven't already. And Carrie Ann also is the country coordinator for Fashion Revolution, and that is what we're going to be talking about a lot in this episode. So it is Fashion Revolution week this week. There is lots of events on talking about garment workers' rights and justice and greenwashing in companies. There are circular economy talks, there are sewing workshops, so I'll link that below. But obviously you might be listening to this when it's not Fashion Revolution week, and that's okay, because the Fashion Revolution is an everyday thing. Every time you get dressed, or every time you're looking to purchase a new garment, a new piece of clothing, you have a choice to participate in the fashion revolution or not. There are lots of issues with the fashion industry, from the pollution, the dyes used, the water usage in growing the fabrics needed, the plastics involved, the fossil fuels involved in making those. Oh, there's so much. Then of course, once you wear it, there's the whole dumping afterwards. But we don't go into that too much here. This is more about the social side of things, which is of course the conditions in which workers have to work when they're making our clothes, which is often not very good conditions. So that's what the fashion revolution is all about, having a revolution basically. We shouldn't have to stick with the way things are, and the pressure that we, the many people are putting on businesses to change are making all these new sustainable businesses pop up, and that's what you want. That's the change that we're seeing. There are campaigns and petitions that you can sign, and I encourage you to sign, and I encourage you to just get active in general. Every time you get dressed, get active. I don't really know what that means. Okay, moving swiftly on. I'll let Carrie Ann do the rest of the talking. Delighted to have you here. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, please rate it. Thank you so much to the people who have left a review and rated it so far on Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you can do that. Thank you. And yeah, I hope it found its way to your eardrums okay, because I did change platform recently to Acast, so hopefully I'm not speaking into a void here. And yeah, if you like what you hear, you can support this podcast on Patreon or on Buy Me a Coffee or on Acast now, I think. Oh god, there's so many ways, too many ways. But yeah, if you like what you hear, you can do that. And as always, best thing, share it with a friend. Thank you so much. Here's Carrie Ann. Talk to you after. Carrie Ann, thank you so much for joining me on the Book of Leaves podcast. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. I've been following the podcast for some time. So as I said earlier on, it's so lovely to be on a podcast that I listen to.
That's great. Thank you so much. As we do with all our guests, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Where you're from, where you grew up, what you do, that kind of stuff?
Yes. Carrie Ann Moran, born and bred in Dublin, from kind of more inner city, moved out to the outskirts of Finglas when I was a wee baba, I suppose. So I was brought up in Finglas. And then, went into college career and whatnot from there. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
And what did you do in college?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I studied law in college with a focus on human rights and immigration. So I was always very socially kind of driven, all about social injustice and things like that. So amazing how I changed careers after that, studied that period of study into then fashion, which was, I remember everybody going, oh my God, what are you doing? But actually they merged so well from my professional career then afterwards for that foundation.
Yeah. And so was fashion something you were always interested in?
Yeah, I was always very creative, I suppose. I'm not saying I was great at fashion by any means, but I was very creative. I love clothes, huge interest in clothes. My mother taught me to sew when I was very young. So we come from a family of basically upcyclers before that term was ever coined.
Deadly.
Yeah, so I was taught to sew at, I think it was 12, 13 or something like that. So I was altering my own clothes, adding patches, really kind of making my own kind of uniqueness on clothing, but going bargain based diving in around Temple Bar when there was so much treasure to find and all the amazing vintage stores back in the early 90s, I suppose, and bringing stuff home for I think it was I remember one time getting 3 items for £1, an eager beaver, and bringing them home and changing them all up and stuff like that for my own kind of little looks. So it was amazing. I turned that into a career somehow.
Yeah, that is absolutely class. That's so cool. And were you and your family doing that out of kind of like a fun hobby, but also to save some money? Or were you aware? You probably weren't aware of the waste then at that point or anything, were you?
Yeah, I think it comes from an element of my parents are very waste not, want not, we Dublin in the 80s was very, very tough on a lot of families, and we were one of those families. So we really truly valued, and I suppose one thing I got from my parents, we really truly valued stuff. One of my earliest memories is my dad finding this old vintage Edwardian style fireplace surround and bringing that home, and my mother was just like, oh my God, Pat. And he was like, trust me. So off I went down to the shed, and it is sitting in the back room of our house now, pride of place. He restored it all back to its original. And I think he paid £1 for it or something at the time.
Oh my God.
So that was just very embedded with us. But to be honest, if my parents weren't doing it, I suppose, from an environmental perspective, they were doing it as needs kind of be, but they also loved having that unique kind of element to things as well. So I certainly caught that off them.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's so amazing. So at what point, because I know obviously you've always had an interest in the social aspect of stuff, but there's also the environmental side of things as well. And was there a point in your life that triggered, or were you always just kind of interested in it?
Yeah, like I certainly was. My own personal interest really kind of gained traction in my teenage years. We didn't, I remember, like, we didn't have recycling bins. You just had this one bin in our household, and that was like for I don't all households in and around the area at the time. Recycling just wasn't a thing. And I used to break my dad's heart because I remember actually very vividly, I think it was after my junior cert, all the notes that you had and that you weren't going to keep and stuff like that. It's like, no, 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 we have to go to recycling center and get rid of these. So, because it's the right thing to do, and waste not, why not type of thing. And he'd be like, okay, off we go, type of thing, and just started like getting those kind of, I suppose, regular things happening in our household. So yeah, just I suppose it's one thing. I've always been very conscious of environmental impact from a very early age, not very, I suppose, on a huge impact way, but just on smaller kind of things. And yeah, it just kind of built from there, I suppose.
And then what happened that you switched careers then into fast fashion? Was there something that...
Yeah, like, well, I suppose I switched careers because I just thought to myself, I'd love to try something creative. And I thought, I'll go and I'll do fashion design, and it'll be just so glamorous. And, I just had, like, I think I was 21, 22 at the time. So I was like, it'd be amazing. And I went in, and I can safely say I would do my law degree 10 times over before doing my fashion career. It was so hard. It was really, really tough. But it was actually when I was studying fashion, I became an eco-fashion designer. Again, sustainable fashion design wasn't really kind of, terminology. Like, we're going back 16, 17 years now, when this was all happening. So yeah, it was actually when I was in college, I think in around my second year. I used to basically make all of my collections and my clothes from offcuts, end the line. I'd go to charity shops, I'd buy roll of fabric. So I had a studio in off Francis Street, and there was actually the big Oxfam home up there, and they used to get in, because there used to be loads of textile factories in the area, and they had rolls and rolls of all these old remnant fabrics and stuff.
Oh, deadly.
So to me, that was just like, oh my God, like, again, uniqueness, saving stuff. I had no idea about the impact of textiles and fashion at that moment in time, but my kind of process started to really kind of gauge into more of I had a zero waste mindset. Like, I wouldn't let any of my scraps go to waste. And then, yeah, it just kind of developed from there. And I remember the moment in college, like in a room where all of our kind of scraps and stuff would all be going into the bin. And I'd be just like, surely we can do something better with this. Like this, like, looking at all people's ends of bits and all. I was like, and we're just going to throw this away. This is madness. Like, this has been made by somebody, like, we just throw this away. It's like, no, that can't be right. And that actually was the moment where I really started looking into the impacts of how textiles were made, and then more so the waste side of it as well. And that really kind of kicked my sustainability area of fashion. And I graduated with my collection was, I think, 80% reclaimed materials. And
Wow.
then I think it was in my final year in college, the Rediscovery Centre were looking for somebody. They had this idea of a fashion program similar to their, I suppose, furniture program. And yeah, that's when my career kind of really started to take off in 2008. That was, yeah.
That's deadly. Yeah, for anyone listening who might not know, the Rediscovery Centre is like a circular economy hub in Ballymun in Dublin, and they've got like an eco shop. They do bike repairs, they do furniture upcycling, and then I've been in there and I've seen some of the clothes. So I don't know if you were maybe behind them as well. That's class.
Yeah, so I spent 12 years working with the Rediscovery Centre up until a year and a half ago, which was just an absolutely phenomenal experience to see what the centre, I call it the centre now, but like the boiler house in itself, like that is reclaimed and reused, like the ethos of everything. So yeah, so look, as I said, I spent 12 years running the fashion department, being part of the bigger team there. And just my heart's so full of pride to see them, like, see all the stuff that they do and what they're doing in that space. Like, it's just phenomenal.
It really is, and they're still doing. They've got some things, I think, online every now and again if people want to like check them out. But yeah, I can't wait for things to open again. And if anyone hasn't been there, like it's one of the visions, such a clear vision of the future you want to create, you know, when you go, like we hear of the supermarkets in I don't know, in Sweden, where you go in and everything's like repaired or a second hand or whatever, and this is like a small scale, well, not that small, but like an Irish example in Dublin, and we have it on our doorstep, so it's such a treasure.
Absolutely. It's a circular economy in action.
Yeah, to see it like is really, really cool. It is possible. So definitely check that out if anyone hasn't already. Can't wait for everything to open up, oh my god. But so you're also part of course, the Fashion Revolution team in Ireland. So what is Fashion Revolution all about?
Sure. So yes, I'm the country coordinator 3 years of Fashion Revolution Ireland. So it's the Irish kind of leg to the big Fashion Revolution campaign. So for those who aren't aware of what Fashion Revolution is, it was I suppose born out of the Rana Plaza disaster that happened nearly 8 years ago. The Rana Plaza disaster was a building that collapsed in Bangladesh, and over 1,100 people were killed. The sad thing about that is it wasn't the first building to collapse, and it hasn't been the last building to collapse. But I suppose why Fashion Revolution was born, it was born in the couple of months after that by Ursula de Castro and Carrie Summers. And it was their kind of stand up to say, you know what, enough is enough. We need to start bringing visibility as to what is going on here in the fashion industry. So in these kind of hubs and in this area within Bangladesh, are all these buildings that are producing fast fashion brands. So the really sad side was that after this building collapse, what you could see in the rubble was the brands that were being made, the high street brands to like from an Irish European that we buy on the Irish high street and across Europe and even on a global scale. Their brands were being made there, and there was absolutely no accountability for that and for those people that perish. And those people perish because that building collapsed due to poor health and safety standards within that building. And it just really resonates that there's a human cost to fast fashion, and that's why Fashion Revolution was born. It was to bring that visibility and transparency to it. So yeah, so every year there's a week long of campaigns, and we're into the 8th year now. Obviously things have changed massively this year, you know, from an Irish perspective. I think in my first year of Fashion Revolution, we had like 45 to 50 events happen across Ireland.
Wow.
This year we're having a bit of a smaller event, and I can talk about that later on. But yeah, so we also theme the year. So this year we're looking at rights, relationship, and revolution. And to me, like when the brand pack came out on this, I was like, this is really going back to basics, you know, of why Fashion Revolution was born. I think COVID last year, you know, if people aren't aware of the Pay Up campaign, that massive global Pay Up campaign that was announced, I suppose 2-3 months, you know, into the global pandemic. The sad thing was that brands once again had placed orders with factories and weren't going to pay for it because their doors closed. So again, shining light on poor regulation across the value chain. And unfortunately, what happened was the people that are suffering at the end of the value chain are the hands that are making these clothes, and they are now being pushed further into the poverty line, below the poverty line, I should say, because brands weren't paying up. So I think that's why Fashion Revolution's come back to that kind of basics and that interconnection of the relationship of human rights, and why we need a fashion revolution as such.
Yeah. And I remember that last year there was, as you said, some high street brand that all of their clothes were just sitting in a warehouse or in a factory somewhere, half made or fully made, and because all the shops were shut down, they couldn't be sold. My housemate works for a fast fashion company, and it's just mad to think that when, you know, they closed in March and reopened in July or August or whatever, that all of that stuff would have been out of date. Like, I work in a supermarket now. Like, yeah, right, okay, all the food, groceries, that would be gone after 3 or 4 months. But I think that there's the whole out of date thing in a clothes. Like, so there's two things there. There's obviously the horrible thing that they're not you know, following through and making sure that the people who need the help, you know, and need their wages, they should obviously ensure that. But there's also then the mindset of, why can't these clothes be sold a couple of months down the line. Oh,
We've been conditioned to these trends, and we've been conditioned to this, oh my God, it's 3 months old, it's out of season, it's so last year type of thing, and I love, there's so many amazing conversations floating about at the moment about bringing our relationship back with clothing, and really valuing clothing and the people that make it, and how you look after and how you care for it, and then you pass it on. So I just find that so enlightening over the last year to 2 years of these conversations coming back, which is amazing. But you're absolutely right. We to think that clothes can go out of date is just really sums up what is one of the fundamental things that's wrong with
yeah.
the fashion industry. Clothes don't go out of date. It's mad. So for that, and that's kind of what was justified with that campaign, I suppose. It's yeah. Again, it's just one of those things. Fashion industry that drives me absolutely bananas.
Yeah. So what is the event though that you mentioned that you'd be doing for Fashion Revolution Week this
So
year?
hopefully we have some fantastic events, and we're just getting some final kind of tweaks on things. So we are doing a big event with new wardrobes. So we're doing a big clothing swap on the Thursday. So we're going to have brands and influencers kind of aligned in on that, and there'll be a panel talk on that as well. We're doing a screening of Textile Mountain. If people haven't watched it, it was released last year. I was part of the process of that. I worked with Katrina Rogerson and the IEN on that project, and it really just highlights textile waste, where it goes, the impact that it has, and just it's so well executed. So we're having a screening and a talk around that. We have a UCD event. What else? We have a hackathon happening with Sophie from What the Hack. So that's a really fantastic event that's going to be kicking off it's going to be kicking off next weekend, so pre the Fashion Revolution Week. So it's kind of a campaign where groups are going to be involved and come up with some really cool kind of messaging for Fashion Revolution. So I'll be judging that as well. So it's a good few panels and talks in total. Again, it's a much smaller scale, but unfortunately, like a lot of we would have always hosted kind of a lot of workshops across Ireland. One of my key, like when I took over the country coordinator role, was to make sure we were reaching parts of Ireland that hadn't been reached before. And it was beautiful to see that year that some community groups are coming together. And people always say to me, oh, like we can't host an event or we can't put a workshop on, what can we do? And I say, don't ever underestimate the power of a conversation. So even if you have a coffee morning, which we could now have coffee mornings now, and just, have discussions around that, because you pick up something that you'll converse with somebody else with, and, this power of translation will continue to grow. So there's a few bits happening. Absolutely. It's not to the scale that, we would have had in the past, but the content is amazing. I'm so excited to see it. Fashion Revolution last year really, really suffered because April was subsequently just directly, after March, and everybody was like, what do we do? How do we do it? So look, it did really suffer. So it's nice to come back this year with some really nice events. So for anybody that's listening and wants to either get involved or come to one of our events, everything's up on Instagram at the moment. And if you go on to the main Fashion Revolution page, our events are all localized over Ireland as well. So we're sharing all that. So so if you follow us on Instagram and Facebook and the usual hubs, you'll be updated as to what's happening.
That's deadly. I'll link the events in the show notes as well. And I know it is harder to not have the in-person buzz, but the one good thing about like online events is that so many more people can kind of come to them, or people who might not want to drive an hour somewhere can just hop on their computer in a way. So hopefully there'll be some new faces there. There is a way on the website that you can kind of be involved with the Fashion Revolution, depending if you're like a retailer or a citizen or whatever. So can you tell us a bit about that, what that's about? Because this is also not just 1 week, it's a kind of year-long, forever-long thing.
Absolutely. So if you go on the Fashion Revolution, fashionrevolution.org is it's the main website, obviously for Fashion Revolution. I'm actually looking at it here while we're talking. You can view all the resources. So there's even information packs for schools and stuff, and by certain age ranges. There's a student ambassador program for second level, third level education. Like the amount of resources on here is absolutely quite extensive. So yeah, so whether you're a citizen, a brand, a retailer, producer, part of a union, educator, a journalist, there's something there for you to take part. And don't, as I say, don't underestimate the power of your voice, and if you can use that across social media. Because one of the key things that we found was we had up to 250 million people engage with the Fashion Revolution campaign by our online presence alone a couple of years ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like we have presence in I don't know how many countries now at the moment. So there's little hubs everywhere of Fashion Revolution. So, this power is just phenomenal, because we would have part of the campaign that was started was hashtag who made my clothes. That, and every year there's kind of other hashtags as well, but that was the key one. So millions and millions of people engaged with that every year for Fashion Revolution Week, but then also in other powerful actions that people are taking. One of our early campaigns was to take a picture of the brand that you were wearing, put it up on social media on one of the platforms, and tag the brand and hashtag who made my clothes on it. And we actually found, like, if you're a brand and you're getting 70 to 80 to 100,000 hits across social media, people asking about who made my clothes and wanting more questions, they started to come back. They started to look at their own internal behaviors and transparency, and question that internally. So as I say, don't ever underestimate what your small action can do, because collectively, this is the whole idea of Fashion Revolution, is that it's collective, it's collaborative, it's all of these hashtags aligning, it's all of our voices aligning and using it for good and for the better, and for that big revolution that we're working toward.
Amazing. That's so amazing. And have you seen brands take or begin to take any of these big or small steps? It's a hard fight.
Absolutely. Look, I think when we look at smaller brands, I think the reality is brands that are being born in the last couple of years are doing so with the right reasons, which is good, because the information is there now. Like 10 to 12 years ago, we did not really have the information that we do have now about the environmental impacts and the societal impacts of the fashion industry. So it's great to see newer, younger brands that are born, are aligning, and are being transparent with that. And it is starting to become the norm. However, what we see and what we know of is the bigger brands, the bigger guys in this kind of fast fashion world, they are making changes. However, the reality is, if you are still at the center of mass consumption, can you ever really be sustainable? And with, I think, a massive recent campaign that came out by a brand with loads of amazing credentials about their sustainability side. However, they didn't give one recognition to the human cost or to the people that were making the clothes. And the true meaning of sustainability is to ensure both an environmental and a socially justice aspect to it. So you can't just have these eco credentials and be paying and not looking after the people that are making the clothes or the teams behind it. So, a lot of questions to be asked there.
Yeah, no, it's so that you cannot be like eco-friendly if you're not. It needs to be human friendly too,
Yeah, like
it's just the two are so interlinked. So people might be listening to this going, is this exactly about, pollution? I'm like, well, no, it's all linked though. It's all so important.
huge. Like it's a huge area, and I know people get confused, find it daunting, get overwhelmed. I always have new designers coming into the area contact me because they're it's so much to take in, to breathe. How can I be part of this? How can I do this? And I say, look, it is absolutely daunting, but if you align your environmental, if you're in business for the right reason, I think there was a podcast I listened to reason, like, it's okay to make money if you're in business for the right reason and you're using that money for good. Okay. So, in a way, don't be feeling bad about making money. Like, we do need money to actually survive on as well. But, make sure you do have those credentials on both sides, from the environmental and the societal side of it, and be transparent in your conversations and your actions from that.
Yeah. So transparency.
Yeah, like transparent. Okay, so that big campaign, that I think we're all very aware of, that hit the screens in the last week or two. Great to see that happening in an element. Oh, and people go, isn't that just brilliant? They're doing whatever. As I said, they had no recognition for the people that are making it. They had no comments on, we're now a living wage manufacturer. We now ensure X in our thing. To put no light on that means they're not being transparent in that area. So brands that say, transparency is from the value across the whole value chain, and you need true transparency. So I need to know when I go in and buy a product that the company is giving me full information right back to where that material was made, how that was made, the credentials of that material, the people that made that, how that was shipped, how that was delivered. You know what I mean? Like, it's the whole value chain we need to have transparency on, because it's huge and it's complex, absolutely. But brands need to be saying, this is where we source from, this is how we source, this is what it's made from, these are the people that make it, these are the rights that we have in place for the team that make this. We are a living wage, above living wage employer. Living wage is different to every region across the world and every area, but living wage is a minimum standard I think we all really need to unite on, because minimum wage just doesn't cut it anymore. Living wage is the only way forward for people to come out of poverty. And unfortunately, millions of people are below the poverty line due to the fast fashion industry, earning absolute pittance for making those clothes. And we need to go, those people are worth more, and the clothes are worth more than that.
Yeah, and there's a big gender imbalance as well, isn't there? Like, it's mostly
Women.
Fast fashion is huge. Like, I think it's up to 80% of women work in the fast fashion industry making the clothes. Very small percentage when you actually look at the demographic on it, actually making it into any sort of management within any of these factories as well. So it's very imbalanced across that.
Because big brands, how do they, some of them kind of deflect responsibility, don't they, when they're outsourcing? How do they try get around, oh, well, we're paying this factory and this factory says they're doing a good job?
Yes, look, this is where legislation regulation really comes into play, and people find loopholes in it. And, one investigation alone would find one organization. This is where they go, well, look, we didn't know. And we didn't know because we have this contract in place with XYZ, and they're producing this. But that factory then usually subcontracts out, but their liability stops with that contract, with that factory that and they go, no. So they don't take any ownership or liability on the subcontracting out. What brands need to be doing is making sure the factories that they're working with, they're only working with, that there's no subcontracts and that behavior isn't going on. But unfortunately, that isn't what's actually happening.
Yeah.
In the majority of cases.
Yeah, they need to go all the way to the very start of things. Yeah, hopefully there will be some legislation in future. Is there anything in Irish politics about fashion that have come up recently, or anything?
I think, a big I was part of the advisory committee for the National Waste Action Plan last year. So I don't know if you saw, but fashion and textiles were a huge part of that, and it's the first time it's really ever been scoped at such a policy level. So that will be coming to light, and the driving force behind that, unfortunately, is not from an Irish perspective, it's from a European perspective. We do have legislation coming into place on the 1st of January 2025 about collection and sorting of textiles, because we are a huge player in that area for textile waste, on a European level. And yeah, Europe now has new policy coming in, so we need to transpose that to an Irish level, but we don't just need to transpose it, we now need to look at the scope of that. So there is a research project happening at the moment about how and what that could possibly look like and who should be involved. So commercial, charity, retail, households, there's a lot of big players in this area, you know, a lot of big sections of textiles being reused or recycled, and making sure it is efficiently done. What we hope to come out of that is more of an educational awareness piece of that, because I think that's a huge, huge thing that's not actually being addressed in Ireland about the impacts of textile waste, and how much we're producing, where it's going, what it's doing. I think that research is going to be up next year, and then there will be actions from that then as well.
Deadly. That's good. Yeah, because education, I think if you have to go looking for this information, you know, some people will just be put off completely and they won't ever find that now. And come here, if people, you know, while brands haven't got adequate transparency and there's not workers' rights or workers' justice, should people boycott, or what should they do? Because obviously people don't want to be out of work either. So what is the best kind of approach?
Yeah, that's a really, really, really good question, because you can say, and I definitely would have been part, you know, even in my own mind process kind of years ago, I would have said, you know, boycott brands, you know, don't buy from them, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is people are suffering at the end. You know, people are, it's a difficult one to kind of advise on. But instead of boycotting, go to brands that are doing the right thing. You know, go to brands that offer sustainable and ethical goods, you know, and look on their website and just double check, you know, what their credentials are sitting. And if you're not happy with it, email them in. You know, again, bang those emails into these brands. They need to be asked these questions. And again, power in numbers. The more people that do that, the more they will internally say, okay, we're being asked on this, we need to start responding, or we need to start looking, and it does start to go up. Those conversations do start to flow from upwards. So yeah, look, I think if you are sustainably and socially driven, you probably wouldn't be buying from those companies anyways. So, you know, the transition is, how do you transition from that kind of fast fashion mindset into more of a sustainable way? And I think Pre-Loved can really offer that kind of bridge initially, before you know your standing on who you should be kind of aligning and what you should be kind of following and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think that's a nice way to venture into more of a sustainable area in the fashion world as such.
Yeah, and there's loads of places, like obviously Depop is after exploding, and of course in Ireland, unfortunately, while our charity shops are closed, there is of course Thriftify, which you're also working with now.
I got my little Chanel S coat from Thriftify. It's
Oh
pink,
my god.
black suit. So it's my little kind of coat that I'm wearing on all my Zoom meetings now.
Amazing. You are Marge Simpson's Chanel, Pre-Loved, embodified. Oh my god, I love it.
Yeah, and like Thrift Spike, they're so well driven. Look, I work for them now, absolutely. So I'm doing this massive shameless plug here. But you know, there's a reason why I work with them. They're in business for the right reason, and they are helping so many charities raise vital funds in these really, really bad times, by being able to sell their goods online with us. So yeah, so it's such a great source. You know, I was a huge fan of Thriftify before I joined with them. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd love them even if my cousin wasn't one of the creators behind it. Also biased here, but but no, Ronan and the team are so good. Have you got any kind of general tips for people for kind of being more eco and socially friendly when it comes to fashion that you yourself follow? Like, you sound like the dream queen of obviously buying secondhand and repairing. Have you got any other kind of tips?
You know, it's part of who I am. You know, being like, I've always, like, my early memories are going around markets as a kid and with my parents and finding like what I call treasure, like being going into sort of like going into a shop that had all the same clothes and it never really appealed to me. I used to be just like, you're gonna end up looking like everybody else. Like, so I always was that kind of way, like going around Mother Red Caps and, you know, really old markets, really fantastic memories for me. So markets were, look, always going to be my huge source of findings, but unfortunately they are closed. But what I say to people is, as I mentioned earlier on, the bridge into more sustainable kind of living with fashion is absolutely to buy pre-loved, is that bridge into it, and it's that kind of safety net of, you know, you're buying pre-loved, you're saving and reducing environmental impact of new goods, but really care for what you have, really own what you have, really kind of nurture the wardrobe that you do own. I'm not a minimalist by any means, far from it. And I love, like, I love Emma Gleason's book that she brought out recently, you know, and I'm definitely not a minimalist, but I truly value things in my wardrobe. Like, I have pieces in there that have so many good memories for me and hold so many good memories, but they get worn. Oh, they do get worn over and over again. So I bring outfits back that maybe I haven't worn in a couple of years, but you know, if and when we can start to go out again, they get rotated. Big events, I've good few dresses that get rotated for events or any kind of formal wear, things like that. Change up the accessories on it. Care for your clothes, mend them, upcycle them, swap. That's such a great thing. My sister's always passing things on to me. I'll pass things on as well. You know, if I'm looking at stuff and I go, do you know what, I don't think my time is done with that piece. It's time to go. My vintage piece I generally do keep on to. But yeah, so, and then swapping them on, having your own kind of, I suppose, clothes swap within your friends. But yeah, if you're buying new, you know, do look for brands that are doing the right thing. I know actually Pat from Reuse, he put up a really great resource the other day of loads of Irish brands and broken them down to women's wear, to children's wear. There's people that I didn't hear of before, but I was like, and she has it saved in her stories, and I've shared it to other people as well. I'm like, this is such a phenomenal resource. So well done, Pat. You're making that so much easier for people to purchase from, and to purchase Irish and ethically and stuff like that, because obviously Pat's done her research and knows her stuff. So yeah, so I definitely advise people to go onto the Pat's page and follow, like, you know, you gotta, like, the Useless Project, another fantastic resource of all things sustainable. They're just like a breath of fresh air. They bring so much fun into the whole space and just give so much light to the right movements that are happening. They're movement in themselves, but they're bringing the movement in Ireland and bringing light onto that. And they're like, I'm being influenced by all these amazing people online. I'm not a big social media person by any means, but yeah, I love following these people because they're just bringing new things into it as well.
Yeah, there can definitely be you might be stuck in like an echo chamber from time to time, but you can learn so much if you tailor your feed to suit you. Social media can really be a tool. Like, that's obviously, it's been a huge way of how we connected this past year, but it's how I've learned about most social and environmental issues. So yeah, just make sure you have a diverse group of people and businesses that you're following.
One key thing I always kind of said to people is, don't be like, there's no need to be following trends. I think this mindset that, like, we have been going back to something that we were talking about earlier on, you know, clothes going out of date and this trend driven kind of concept, like, that needs to go. Like, that is just nuts.
That needs to go in the bin. Yeah.
That needs to be massively dropped into the black bin. But you know, we can only wear florals in February, March of 2000, you know, whatever. You're just going, oh, I can't wear that because that was last season. That's right. Break away from the mold, you know, create your own style, your own trend. And don't, like, you know, because we've been taught that this is the way it should be, when actually it never really was. Like, you know, look at subcultures and how they all came about. They came out from uniqueness, and look at all the amazing things that came out of that. You know, and I do love to see there's so many other kind of new subcultures coming out. But break from the mold and don't be afraid to be your own style and create your own trend.
Yeah, there should be no kind of rules around seeing it. Well, and I'm the most least fashionable person. Like I literally wear the same dressing gown every single day, but I wear what's like whatever's comfortable. And
Comfort is key for the last year.
Oh, definitely. Loungewear has skyrocketed, and that's something I'll definitely be keeping in my life forever. But so I've started doing, you might not have heard, obviously, because season 3 is yet to be out, but I'm doing a new thing this season of some quick fire questions at the end, where you basically pick a letter between A and Z. And there is a random question. Now, some of them are eco kind of related, but they don't have to be at all. But there's one question I want to actually make sure that you're asked, and that is, what is your favourite secondhand find? Could be vintage or what. You're allowed one clothes and one non-clothes item.
Okay. I got this pink. You see it. I think I'm wearing it in any picture of Instagram on the last year. I basically have it on. But it's this really cerise pink full length wool coat that I bought. I bought it in the Naval Ireland in Fisborough. I think it was like 10 or 12 euro. And I put it on me in the shop, and it was just like, oh my God, we're meant to be. This is me in a coat. Like, so I wear it all the time. Everybody knows me as the woman in the pink coat going around the Batter. That's my favorite thing of recent years that I found. So that's just one. I could go into a list, absolutely. And then one non-fashion item. Actually, do you know what? You can probably see here, I have this pink vintage wardrobe.
Oh, I thought it was a wall painted pink with like a thing hanging up. Okay.
And do you know, I got this for free from somebody up the road in Dublin 7. A friend of mine tagged it in and said, you need this in your life. And I was like, I need that in my life 100%. So off I went, got it in the back of a van, brought it home. The funny story when I went up to the couple that I picked it off was basically, it was for her daughter's bedroom. Her daughter's a teenager now, and she just, it just wasn't for her anymore, whatever. Like, I'm taking it, happy days. But it was actually painted in the Rediscovery Centre. The minute I saw it, I recognized it because I remember the furniture manager at the time, and we're going back 8 years, I think, when this was done in the Rediscovery Centre. Because the minute I saw it, I went, where did you get this done? And she's like, yeah, it's like, it's the Rediscovery Centre. Yeah, I remember this. I worked there. I worked in the fashion department. And this is like, how amazing. I remember,
oh my God,
showing it to me, and I fell in love with it. And I remember going, oh, it's a pink wardrobe. I love pink, by the way, if you haven't guessed. And it's now mine.
What a story, like destined to be. I'm actually emotional thinking about you being reunited with this wardrobe, like meant to be. But that's so fab. Okay, so we'll pick a few questions before we go. Can you give me your first letter?
C.
C. One request you'd make of your younger self.
Oh, calm down.
I love it. Okay, next letter.
W.
W. If you could live as an animal, what would it be?
What would it be? I love penguins. And I love, penguins would be one of my favorite animals. Love penguins. I love, is it the Empirical penguin where they mate for life?
Yeah.
And I just love everything about them. The little walk and just the way they go on. They're gas. My childhood was filled with David Attenborough documentaries.
Brilliant. Oh my God, I love it. Okay, we'll do 2 more. So give us another letter.
Let's go with Z.
Z. 3 things you'd bring to a desert island.
Ooh, book, music, food.
I'll pick the broadest categories to cover all of my bags.
A book, right? So yeah, simplify that, right? Definitely a book. What book could I read over and over again? I'd probably bring, let's see, I have like the William Shakespeare book. I have a book downstairs which literally has all his sonnets,
all of it, yeah,
everything in it. So there's endless reading in there. So we'd bring that book. I would resurrect an old iPod and make sure everything's on it. So you'll have all the music. So that's one item in theory. And then food. I think I'd just survive on chocolate, to be honest. I get the good stuff from the island.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully there'll be coconuts or a cocoa bean tree and you can make your own chocolate.
Yeah.
And last letter. I. Best plant-based meal you've ever had?
Ooh, homemade or takeout?
Let's go for one of each.
Okay, let's see. Ooh, one is going to be a tough one. With a hangover, it's got to be probably the vegan sandwich company.
Yeah.
Bold, delicious, just hits the spot. It hits spot anytime, but it gives you that really dirty plant-based vegan food with a hangover. And then homemade, I make a really good dal. Like, I have to be honest, it's one of my favorite meals. I make a really good dal. I eat mostly plant-based anyways. So yeah, probably a good curry.
You can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong, yeah, with a good curry. And I do make a good dal, which I'm actually going to make at the weekend.
Pretty good. Excellent. Well, Carrie Ann, you have imparted a lot of wisdom and inspiration to not only contact brands and get involved with the fashion revolution, but to get everyone thinking about having a dal for dinner. Thank you so much for giving me your time on this Friday.
It's been brilliant. Thanks so much.
And just like that, the first of probably 21 or 2 chats that I'm going to have this year is over. And I hope you found Carrie Ann as charismatic and charming and just as lovely as I did. You can follow her on Instagram, but make sure you follow Fashion Revolution. There's also a page for Ireland and I've linked all of that. And I love the way that Fashion Revolution is all about reaching the places that haven't typically been reached. So getting in to the rural parts of the world and the rural parts of Ireland, everything when it comes to sustainability and eco-friendly living, it is nearly always Dublin based, but the smaller towns and the smaller villages and the rural places, they do get overlooked an awful lot, and it's there more than ever that we need to bring the climate conversations and social justice conversations into the mix. So yeah, if you want to host a virtual chats over hi, there's my housemate coming home. If you want to host a virtual coffee morning while you're chatting about circular economy and fashion and what you can do, absolutely do that. Like Carrie Ann said, words have power and you never ever know what your impact will be, and as I love to say, the ripple effect that you'll have. So that is it for this week. Stay tuned. In 2 weeks' time, I will be interviewing Zach Lumley. Zach is an activist with Extinction Rebellion, System Change Ireland and Scientist Rebellion, and was recently imprisoned for a day or two for a vandalism action that he filmed in Dublin. So I'm going to talk to him about why he did that. I'll be asking him the hard questions. Haven't interviewed him yet, actually. I'll be doing that tomorrow. But yeah, so stay tuned for that. We're going to talk about the place of disruption and civil disobedience in the climate justice. What does it do? Why? Does it belong here? Are there better ways? So yeah, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to share it with a friend, rate, review, subscribe, and yeah, just pat yourself on the back for making it this far. And if anyone knows any hairdressers on the sly, please send them my way. I am sitting on my hair. Oh my god. I will talk to you soon, guys. Woo! Good to be back. Bye.